that is difficult because we know where
Yes, Sheikh, can you hear me, please? Yes. I request Honorable Sheikh to commence the talk again, please.
All right.
Yes.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let me start this conversation with a necessity, the necessity to define what is the Islamic economic model. This is to say what is the health in order to understand what is illness. What is our Islamic economic model? Do we have an Islamic economic model? Because some people question this. So they say we didn't have any economic model system until the West came and illuminate us with capitalism, which is what we have today. And then we find ourselves in the odd position of having to always interface with an alien model, never with our own. And what we need is to define this Islamic economic model on the basis of what we know. And what we know is that the basis of the deen is in the amal of the Ahl al-Medina. It's to go back to Medina. It's what the Prime Minister of Pakistan keeps repeating. The state of Medina. We have to go back to the state of Medina. But what is the state of Medina? And this is where we will find the basis on which we can discuss monetary issues, commercial issues, contracts, etc. To define something as complicated and sophisticated as stock market, then we need to understand what is the way in which we did it in the first place. Then we understand that many of the issues that come forward today to us, they are already outside the boundaries. We have alternatives that we don't need to Islamize that. So the first question is, what is money in Medina? And we know what money in Medina was. It was dinar and dirham. This was the currency of the people. And a dinar is not the currency of Kuwait. Dinar was a small coin of 4.25 grams, or otherwise the weight of the mithqal. And each one of these coins was sealed by an authority that guaranteed that the weight had been correct. And then we have the silver dirham, that it was defined as 7/10 of the mithqal, that is 2.975 grams. And that was the dirham that the people use in Medina, and it became the currency of the Muslims up until the fall of the Caliphate. These units of measure, they are important in themselves because they are used in the Sharia in order to define some of the key elements in the law. And that's why Ibn Khaldun in the Muqaddimah, he says that this, because the dinar is mentioned in Quran and because the dirham is mentioned in Quran, they have become standards for the measure of some of the important issues of the Sharia. Among them is, of course, the nisab of zakat. The nisab of zakat, this is an example where our difficulties start. The nisab of zakat is known as 20 dinar or 200 dirham. Dinar, that implies the necessity to mint the dinar and the dirham in order to evaluate, in order to calculate the zakat. So it becomes an obligatory condition to bring the dinar and the dirham. And this is the position of Ibn Khaldun and many of the scholars. There was no issue to go any further on the matter because nobody questioned this. There was not at that point, paper money had not been invented. And it was certainly not part of the life of the Muslims. They knew what paper receipts are, the sukuk. This is to say to somebody, I owe you X amount of money or wealth or commodities, whatever. But this was never understood that a sukuk could become money. This is out of the question. Because one of the conditions upon which all the matters of trading are concerned, including money, because money is part of trading, is the king of all commodities, is tijaratun an taradin minkum, trade with mutual consent. This is a condition given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is unsurpassable, is a fundamental element in our understanding of trade, which means that you cannot force somebody to buy something. At that point, it ceases to be trade, and at that point, it becomes something else, extortion, theft, or whatever you want to call it. It requires mutual consent. The same thing with money. Money cannot be imposed. Even the authority of the caliphate could not say to the people that the only currency in the Dar al-Islam is the gold dinar. He doesn't have the authority to do that, even though the dinar is an authentic means of payment, because the fundamental element is tijaratuna an taradin minkum, trade with mutual consent. So the fact is, the people traded with dinar and dirham in the majority of the cases, but they also trade with barley and with salt and with cereals in its various forms, or with dates, or whatever they want to, because there was a freedom to trade. So Imam Malik could say money is any commodity, and I emphasize the word commodity, which is commonly accepted as a medium of exchange. Anyone, as long as it's a commodity and is mutually accepted by the people. Which means the authority of the government rests in making available dinar and dirham for religious purposes, and because it is part of our religious purposes, and not only dinar and dirham, not only the zakat, but also the trade in general is part of our religious duties to do it correctly. So the dinar and the dirham was always minted, but there was not the idea, not even remotely, that the government will give to themselves the right of legal tender, the right of imposing a monopoly on any currency, so including the currencies that we have today, the so-called fiat currencies. I mean, the most notorious case for the people in Pakistan will be its own currency. Is called rupee, but the rupee is a silver coin that it was established during the Mughals, and it has a weight of a tola, and that was the currency that was universally used among the people, perfectly acceptable. Although the dinar and the dirham need to be established in order to calculate the questions of zakat, but you can use any other standard as long as it's gold and silver, and the weight of the silver is established, so there's no fakes in the currency naturally. What you have in today is, instead of that, is you have, I promise to pay the amount of 1,000 rupees in a bill of 1,000 by the central bank. Everybody knows that if you go to the central bank and you say, give me the 1,000 rupees, nobody's going to pay you. So this is an invalid contract. But since there is no intention in the first place to pay those 100 rupees, it's just a simple form of fraud. It's not invented by Pakistan. Pakistan inherited the system from the British, and the British created the constitution that guarantees the fundamental elements that they are important to them. That is the establishment of a model of society that is essentially capitalist, consisting of three elements that repeat throughout all the constitutions throughout the world. The existence of a central bank, which is an institution of usury and is completely forbidden. The establishment of national debt, which means that somebody born in Pakistan comes into the world with a debt that he has not incurred himself or herself. It's simply given to them by some foreign agreement, which has no basis in Islam. But is fundamental in order to sustain the economic system of the West, which is to disempower governments and to cripple them with debt. As we know, in the case of Pakistan, this debt not only relates to an undue amount of money always to be paid to this third party, but it comes alongside with conditions, economic conditions that IMF among all the institutions impose on the country in order to keep lending this money that in brackets doesn't exist. In this system of national debt becomes instrumental to how these nations are formed. And thirdly, it becomes a fundamental part of the constitution, that is central bank, national debt. The third one is legal tender, the law of legal tender. This is to impose upon the citizens the creation of a fiat currency that doesn't have any definition. So the rupee from the very, very, very first moment in Pakistan never meant to be a payment in silver, but it was always a fake currency, such as it was at the time in Britain, France, and the rest of Europe. Now, this fraudulent system is established by the constitution itself, so it becomes almost impossible for the citizens to overcome these circumstances. Islam is then circumscribed to occupy the space that is left. So the question of paper money is not to be questioned. The question of national debt is not to be questioned, and the question of the establishment of the central banks and the consequent commercial banks is not to be questioned. So then Islam, which is proclaimed in the constitution itself as being the law of the people and the sovereignty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in article number 1, then is all diluted because of the other articles that the constitution contains. And this is how we find ourselves. We find ourselves constrained. So the use of Islamic law can never challenge the constitution. So the Islamic law, Sharia, is now constricted. It's like in a straitjacket. It cannot move outside these boundaries. So we have now a Sharia that is redefined in terms of not economic matters. You cannot speak about riba. You cannot say riba is haram. Well, you can say it, but it doesn't matter. The central banks are left, right, and center. The government borrows money at interest that everybody is obliged to pay. Everybody is participating in riba, whether you like it or not. So it becomes just more or less a metaphorical way of relating to our deen in terms of some sort of melancholy, the things that we should do, but we can't. And the Sharia gets concentrated on personal matters, personal morality. Social morality kind of fades away, and personal morality becomes the center. Ibadah is more or less the center of the matter, and then dress codes particularly focus on woman, sexuality. These are the themes that occupied all the space. So the matters, for example, of the scarf take an overwhelming importance in relation to something much more important, which is riba itself. I don't need to quote the hadith on the matter regarding the comparison Rasulullah made between riba and zina. No? These are well-known hadiths that suggest that this is something very important. Also, I need to remind you that harb min Allahi wa rasuli is the only moment in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares harb, a war against this. He doesn't declare war against wine or against the eating of pork, but yes, on riba. Is because it affects every aspect of society. Is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to use riba. It's like being touched by the hand of shaitan. Is something that affects all society. Even a private contract affects the entire society. It's a public crime. It's a communal crime. And yet we find ourselves incapable of dealing with the matter. Even in the discussions I had with the ulama in Pakistan, there was a tremendous difficulty in defining what riba is, which I was quite surprised, because obviously they are not using it. So they're capable of reciting all the hadith on the matter, but not to give a proper definition, which is just to give the most classical one. The best definition of riba that is available to us is from the tafsir, Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, in his Ahkam al-Quran, which is a tafsir dedicated to the hukum of Quran. He defines with all clarity, and riba is any unjustified increment between the value of the goods given and the value of the goods received. And then there is two types of riba. One is an increment with which has to do with quantities, and this is riba al-fadl, and there is an increase that has to do with timing. This is including forcefully and justifiably a time delay in a transaction that doesn't allow it. And this is riba al-nasiya. Now, this in the modernist thesis coming from Rashid Reda and in that tradition of Egypt of Islah and modernism, this group of people created a redefinition of riba, in which riba al-nasiya became associated with loans, and riba al-fadl practically became something impossible to establish. And we have a modern definition, which you go to the internet and you'll find it, which is incredibly convoluted in contradictions from left, right, and center. We even have a definition, a problem in defining riba. And I think part of the job of the leading ulama of Pakistan, that they are so important to the rest of the ummah, is to put these things right and to redefine it correctly, because Islamic banking has distorted these definitions. But given the fact that we now know what riba is, the fact is that we find ourselves in an economic system in Pakistan that is totally alien. And then we are asked to give fatwa. Now the process becomes an awkward exercise of Islamization. So the ulama are asked, well, we have banks, whether we like it or not, how do we Islamize them? And this is like somebody being asked to Islamize a brothel, a house of prostitutes. And then you have to Islamize it. How can you Islamize that? It's impossible. So they resort to kind of decoration changes, like writing Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim at the door of the brothel, for example, or we pray on time. So we do little things that appear to be more Islamic than one who doesn't do it, but still remains the same. A bank is a bank. Fractional reserve banking, creation of credit, this is unacceptable. Yet for the majority of the people leading schools that they have been born in Pakistan, most of them, first Jamaat al-Islamiyah and the creation of this Islamic economic idea, the Islamization of capitalism, using a method that is quite ridiculous, is the complete absence of an Islamic model. This is always the case. Nobody looks at the annal of the Ahl al-Medina like we didn't have any model. We are just now naked before the task of Islamizing this institution, which is how we find ourselves with cryptocurrencies, by the way. No? And with the bank, what we do is that we just select a number of self-service hadith, and we transform this hadith into principles, and then we apply this to the bank. And then we say, well, according to the principle of Islam, then this contract is correct or is not correct. And similar methods, we can Islamize anything that you want. You can Islamize the pork, you can Islamize the wine, because there must be something good in the wine that it is acceptable. You just simply have to ignore the fact that it is forbidden. So this is what they've done, and Islamic banks is the standard way of looking at our economic systems. From there, it has emerged something, a pseudoscience called Islamic economics. I mean, which is economics is as an ideology, it's not a science, it's pure ideological. Like 19th century European writers wrote about them, like the sect. They used to call them the sect, the economists, because they represent the sect. It's an ideological group, mostly created by Anglo-Saxon writers, which had a very, very particular way of looking at economics, including the fact that being Protestants, this Protestant Europe, defined that riba is halal according to them. So for the Catholics, it was forbidden, but for the Protestants, it was allowed. So banking developed, especially in the north of Europe, in the Protestant part of Europe, and they extended this method, not only just in practice, but also in ideology. So they took upon themselves, the British, to create a false ideology of subjugation. Is to tell the people that they were given these tools of oppression to make them believe that it was good for them. So this is cultural use of ideas in order to impose your own. And the British were very good at this. They were they created a whole thesis, a whole philosophy, if you want, of ideas, a constellation of ideas based on free market, free contracts, etc., that it came known as liberalism in the West. And what it was saying is essentially riba is halal, alongside with many other things. They talk about free markets, but they don't know what a market is. They don't define markets. Markets, according to them, is Google, Amazon, etc. These are not markets. These are monopolies. A public marketplace in Islam is well defined. It's an institution, it's a waqf institution where the people can buy and sell freely. The institution itself being a public common property. There were no cities in Islam without a public marketplace, not a supermarket, but a public marketplace. When Rasul arrives to Medina, he makes a mosque and then he makes a market, a public marketplace. And he says the rules of the market are the same as the mosque. So it's a sadaqah to the people. It's a property that it is defined per eternity as a waqf. So the purpose cannot be changed. It cannot be sold. It cannot be changed. It's like a mosque. And everybody has access to the mosque. In the same way that nobody will be allowed to make a special place for himself in the mosque and say, only me and my family can pray here. That would be absurd. Or to mark the space to pray in that particular spot, that would be completely seen as impossible and unacceptable. The same thing in the marketplace. The marketplace was a common place, and Omar ibn Khattab used to go there, and there are known stories where he took somebody who had put a jar just to keep the space, throw it away, and in some case he burned a tent because somebody had fixed it into the land, like said, this is my land, nobody can trade here except me. That was not acceptable. So it was a place where people could buy and sell. There was a right of everybody to buy and sell. That's a marketplace. There is no one single public marketplace in Pakistan. What you have is these flea markets, not institutions, not a place. If you want to understand the difference, you have to go to much more evolved societies, like, for example, in Al-Andalus, you find physical public marketplaces built, and the Ottomans did the same. The Grand Bazaar of Istanbul is a mega structure of a place dedicated for trading. There is no such thing in Pakistan. The conditions are at the streets, with no sense of a space granted to the public, but there are shops, what you call bazaars. These bazaars are not public marketplaces. So we have forgotten that memory. The British didn't encourage the creation of these public markets. Simply, this fell into oblivion. And nowadays, we have difficulty in interpreting these ideas of free market because we have no idea of what a market is. In other words, what is missing here is our own model. Our own model in terms of money, in terms of markets, in terms of contracts, because having allowed riba, it distorts all kinds of contracts. We may have the time to discuss the question of the stocks and what it is, the stock market, which is not a market again. But the stocks, what are the stocks? These are shares that give you no authority to decide on the company. They are already deprived of that capacity. So you are called, this is presented to the Muslims, this is partnership, shirkat, but you cannot have partnership without the capacity to be owner. A principle of, the fundamental principle of partnership is that two people come together and they share agency. So in other words, one gives to the other right over his property and the other one gives to the other. So that is like both of them have ownership, both of them, independent of the amount of shares. So for example, if one has 60% of the shares and the other one has 40% of the shares, both exercise the right of ownership in an identical terms. There is no voting rights. That never existed in Islam. I challenge anyone to look into it. It's because it's impossible. It's because if the moment you establish majority ownership, this is a concept invented in the West in order to manipulate companies, is then one party the 60% will have the ownership, and the other one is only lending the money to the other one who makes the decisions. So partnership requires full decision making. And that means in the stream that the 1% in a company where one owns 1% and the other one 99%, they both have equal amount of decision making. A different thing is what happened with the results. So the results will be shared according to the shares that each one have. So the one who has 99% will receive 99% of the benefit. The one that has 1% will receive only 1. That is without question. But in decision making, as long as you call it partnership, it requires both of them to have decision making. That means that the principle of stock, where the voting right is already deprived, or when majority shareholding it applies, these are not Islamic contracts. It means that somebody else is the owner, and you just simply lend the money. When you are lending the money to that person because you cannot decide anything, then a different type of argument starts, which is when you lend money, you are not due any money in return. So the dividends will be seen only as an increase in the loan. So the dividends are nothing but an instrument of riba in a loan contract. This is how far it goes. The dividends don't represent the results of the company. We know that. So a company can, for example, be losing money, but increase the capital or borrow money, and then you have created an artificial profit that then you can share to the shareholders. It has no relationship whatsoever with the profits of the company. And so significantly enough, the dividends, they are an instrument used in order to compete with borrowing interest rates. So in fact, they are very much related to interest rates. If the dividends are lower than the interest rates granted by commercial banks, then there is very little incentive for people to lend the money to companies. So it's always a little bit above. If the interest rates raise above it, then the dividends usually go alongside with it. So they're interrelated with interest rates rather than with the profits of the company. That is a fact, that is another indication that what we are dealing here with is not with shares, but we are leaning in a contract of lending. And just to gather these initial thoughts and to allow for new questions to happen, let me just round up this idea with the fact that stocks are known as another form of finance. So from the point of view of the company, you have two possibilities. One is to borrow from the bank, that's a straight interest rate, or you can create equity, new equity, and you borrow money from the investors who have no decision making. You take their money and you just pay them an interest rate that you decide. So your decision in how much interest rate you pay, the dividends, is in the hands of the board of directors. In any case, is seen from the perspective of the board of directors as another way of financing. So is inside the world of credit, not inside the world of partnership. And just one final thought on this is the principle of majority ownership it was created in the West in order to hide ownerships. So it's very simple to understand. If you take a company A and someone owns 51% of that company, and the other person or the group of people own the other 49%, you are the complete owner. You make all the decisions. There can be a vote, but it doesn't matter because I decide. Now, but with all the capital of company A, if I buy another 50% of a company B, I'm using not only my resources, but the resources of the people that they are my stock owners alongside with me. I use all the capital in order to buy 50% of company B. In company B, I will have complete control. Yet in company B, I will only own half of the company. And with that 25%, I will have full control of company B. If I use company B, all the capital of company B, to buy another 50% of company C, I can have control of the company C with only half of the half of the company, that is 12.5%. And you can follow this. So in other words, the mathematical formula of this will be 1 divided by 2 to the power of n. And n is the number of different subsequent companies that you create in the network. This exists. I did this exercise with one of my students, and we followed one company in Spain that it was part of the company of Maxwell Communication Corporation. Maxwell is the great publicist, and we've traced this company in Spain at the level number 11. So it means with only 1 divided by 2 at the power of 11, with nothing, you have full control of that company. This is how they do it. So within small, tiny minorities, they control large amount of power. They distribute the profit, yes, but they concentrate power, which is what matters to them. So the concentration of power is the key to understand why these companies were formulated. Do they have any basis to Islam? Absolutely not. In other words, from the point of view of Islam, a share is simply a void contract. It will be dismissed. It will say you have to rewrite it. If you call, and the key, the matter will be, if the two parties, if you can exercise ownership, then partnership is correct. If you cannot exercise ownership, then partnership is not correct. Something else is taking place. There is either a loan or it is a partnership. It's that simple. And on the basis, the problem is that if you call it a loan, then the question of riba comes in between. If on the other hand, if you call it partnership, but it's a loan, then you can pay interest rates and you call them profit. This is one of the little games that Islamic banks play in order to justify the creation of these Islamic Dow Jones, which is another of these ridiculous ideas. Of course, when you invest in a company in the West, you have to bear in mind that you are becoming a partner to a company that all of them, without exception, they practice riba. So you will be doing riba. So some ingenious person at the very beginning of Islamic banking, in those days, Khurshid Ahmed was one of the leading characters in the Islamization of capitalism. They came with a ludicrous idea that if the capital of the company, if the debt of the company doesn't exceed 20% of the total capital, so the debt is not more than 20% of the total capital of the company, then that's not riba. And the question is, why 20? Why not 19.5? Why not 25? What makes it little riba and a lot of riba? It's ridiculous, but this is how they formulate it. So on the basis of this, is if your debt is little, if your interest is little, then it's not too haram. It's what I call the elasticity of the haram. It's elastic. So you have something, now the haram is becomes, it's not too haram. And the halal is, well, it's almost halal. Astaghfirullah. I mean, what is this? But this is where we are. We are living in this world. These people go around just speaking public conferences like nothing happens. And in Pakistan, in Karachi, you have the cathedral of Islamic banking, which is under Taqi Usmani, who has is the foundation of everything to do with Islamization of economics. This is the background we find ourselves in. There is a lot of problems in trying to Islamize alien concepts. The key of the matter is to go back to Medina Munawwara and to build from there what is right and what is wrong. So allow me this long introduction just to put a little bit of the points, but let me now ask you specifically what are the things that interest you, and I will try to resolve them.
Yes, Sheikh, thank you very much. And I can see that there are so many scholars who have joined us from different parts of the world. And thank you very much for your inaugural talk on Islamic monetary system and what are your precious thoughts regarding that. Sheikh, there are so many people who want to purchase and buy Bitcoins and they want to deal in Bitcoins. So is it halal in your opinion? We would like to know directly the answer. Is it halal in your opinion? And if it is haram, so what is the reason behind that? And if it is haram, what can be the alternate? Because we read in Hadith that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, keeping in view the issues regarding the Islamic eschatology, that nothing will be beneficial in end times except dirham and dinar. So how do you see the Bitcoins or Descoin or decentralized currency, or you see these all sort of digital currency? What is your opinion about that?
Well, let me be absolutely clear. Is haram, 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 haram. And there are like 20 reasons why it's haram. But the important part is that why many of us, we are so desperate to find alternatives. No? And so let's try to analyze Bitcoin. First of all, it presents itself as a cryptocurrency, yet it's not a currency. It is impossible to buy something with Bitcoin. If you, for example, were to buy a cup of coffee, the transaction cost of the coffee is more than the coffee itself. And this price is meant to rise as the currency starts appreciating, because there's only a limited amount of it. So it's logically that the value will continue increasing. It's good from the point of view of investment, but is for the point of view of transaction, it's terrible. Then they have difficulties on top of it in terms of how long it takes to make the transaction, because it could be up to 15 minutes. So you buy a cup of coffee, you have to wait 15 minutes, and the price may change in these 15 minutes, because the price that 15 minutes earlier and 15 minutes later may have changed. This is how weird the whole thing is. So from the point of view of currency, it just doesn't serve a purpose. But from the point of view of investment, it is an investment indeed. I mean, a casino is a form of investment. You just put in the roulette X amount of money, and you can obtain a roulette, and there is a good percentage that you can win or lose. And it's mathematically can be calculated. And it may be in occasions better to bet in the casino than it is to bet in the stock exchange. But this is just from the point of view of the investment itself, nothing to do with Islam. Some people suggest that the existing cryptocurrencies are a little bit like shareholding. So there is a suggestion that an ICO, an initial coin offering, which is like IPO, no? Is the offering of public shares. And this comparison between one and the other establishes an interesting line of thought and some important considerations, just to show that the whole thing is a fallacy. Number one is even the kuffar have problems with cryptocurrencies. Why? The number one reason is that they are not regulated. Regulation in the stock prices is very important, because somebody who has a large quantity of a share could have inside trading information. What is inside trading? Is that you know by the activity that you can generate out of your large shareholding that you can change the price of that value. Or if you know that somebody is about to do it, you can not do it yourself because it may be a problem, but you can just feed somebody else with that information. He profits and you share in the background the profit. This is inside information. And this is strictly forbidden, because it will give an unfair advantages to the large players. Still, it happens. In the stock exchange, if you're a large stockholder, you have a fairer chance of winning that you're a small shareholder. Because simply when you buy or sell large amounts of stock at once, you can sell them at a particular price, wait until, if it is a sale, the price to go down. If it is a buying, the price to go up, and then do the consequently opposite transaction once the price has been modified. And you can do it with derivatives in terms of expecting the fall of a price to be short, to be long, or to be short in that particular state. It's a whole technology that is well developed, but it's regulated somehow. Now, what happens with Bitcoin is that the same process happens. The price keeps going up and down, except there is no regulation possible. I'm saying that it's not that there's no regulation only, it's that they don't want regulation. By their own definition, they don't want anybody to regulate it, which means that the people can play tricks with the pricing and you cannot even complain. You have to accept the fact that the ownership of these stocks is hidden, is anonymous, and these people can do anything they want in order to manipulate the price. Well, from that point of view, if the selling and buying in the stocks is already a problem, in the case of Bitcoin, you find something that is completely out of your hand. So there is a big hype in buying and selling Bitcoins because they say, look, it started at this price, now is a different one. But I haven't met anybody who has made any money significant without having lost an identical amount of money. Even those who started at the very beginning, when they started buying and selling, they start losing it at the end. And the majority of the people that I know, they own these stocks and they have no capacity to take profit from them other than just continue speculating in a market that they cannot control. Well, governments are not very happy with this idea, and governments like China and Turkey, I don't know, Pakistan, but they have already forbidden straightforward these completely manipulable false markets. But there is more. Okay, even if the kuffar say it is haram, let's say why we will say it's more than haram. Well, every time we speak about currencies, then we always have to think in terms of what is the alternative. Okay? What is the alternative? The alternative is freedom. Islam stands for freedom. Islam is a liberation from riba and from all the forms of monopoly. Islam is the religion of freedom. That's why the world is in the predicament it finds itself in, because Islam has not been allowed to express itself again. When it comes to money, freedom is the fundamental point. That is, tijaratuna anta radin minkum, and that means the people are free to choose. Now, some people argue naively, they say, but hey, Bitcoin, you are free. Okay, with the rupee, there is an obligation. If you are in Pakistan, you have to use the rupee. You cannot use the US dollar. You have to use the rupee. And if you are in debt, you are obliged to accept it. That's the law of legal tender. So the government can enforce any form of tax, and you have to pay it with this currency. So that's a monopoly, straightforward. So that's the reason that is not acceptable. One of the reasons, there are many, many more why fiat currency is forbidden. But from the point of view of monopoly, they say, but Bitcoin is free. You open an account, you buy Bitcoin only if you want. But this is not truly freedom until you have an equivalent form of dinar and dirham in the market. Because I can guarantee you this. If you have dinar and dirham available in the market, nobody will want to use anybody else. Okay, the best argument in favor of physical gold coins is that if you were to be given to the people of Pakistan, if we start minting dinar and dirham in Pakistan and we offer it to the people in identical legal frame, so in other words, without all the laws against the use of dinar and dirham, which are still in practice in Pakistan. In Pakistan, we still have British law that says minting dinar and dirham is forbidden. It has to be cancelled, but it's not. The British imposed this law in order to bring forward their own currency, which, by the way, was this rupee. They created this false piece of paper. And it's worth to understand this history a little bit more, because I think people don't realize. Hindustan was the richest country in the world. The richest country in the world when the British arrived in its shores. The richest, but how much richer it was? Well, approximately 50% of the GDP of the world was shared between China and India. This is in the year 1800. The GDP at the time of this tiny little island, miserable island, called Britain, it's only represented like 2% of the GDP of the world. 2% in comparison to 25%. The province of Bengal was by far the richest inside the Mughal Empire. It represented about half of the GDP of the Mughal Empire. That means around 12%. 12%. When the British conquered Bengal, they conquered a region of the world that had a GDP 6 times bigger, 6 times bigger than the entire Britain. It was wealthy and rich. The transactions between these two people always was an outflow of gold and silver coming to India, and India paid back with spices, with clothing, especially Bengal, and with other work, craft of wood, furniture, etc. So they were fantastic, but they were particularly fantastic in textiles. That's why they say when Britain conquered India, they won the lottery. It was the crown it was the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, indeed. But what do? Over the time, they start introducing riba, they start introducing their own banks, and they start replacing the rupee, the physical rupee, which was the currency of the people of the Mughal Empire. They take the silver and they say, give them another piece of paper that says, I will pay you 1 rupee. And they convince the people with good arguments or vice versa that to keep the silver in the pocket was heavy and it was unnecessary. I will replace it with this piece of paper. So they took the silver from the people and they gave them pieces of paper that says 1 rupee. They said, don't worry, we will pay you. And at the beginning, they started paying. And then there was a relationship between the paper money and the rupee that it was still 1-to-1. So in other words, you could go to the bank and they can give you that amount, but only if you demand it. So it means the mathematical equation of keeping that system going is that you have to have enough gold in order to sustain the movement of demand. It could be just 10%, 10% in cash, the rest is just paper money. So you can have 10 times more paper in circulation than you had in physical assets. And that's how they could expand the paper as if the silver was expanding. So the silver ended up all in the hands of the Britain back to England, which financed the Industrial Revolution, while other people were left with pieces of paper. It was a system of theft. When they couldn't pay back even that 10%, they just simply severed the relationship, and the paper money was all the people had. All the silver of the entire Hindustan moved to England, and we were left with the pieces of paper. This system of extortion of theft that transformed the richest country in the world in one of the poorest, with 20 known famines during that period of time. 20 people dying of starvation during the British imposition, with the complete destruction of the local industry in order to favor the English one. So they forced the closing down of our guild system, a system of organization of production, in order to favor England. But the currency had changed, the instrument of the currency had changed. Now, when the independence of Pakistan comes in, we don't go back to our economic system. We copy the one that England had used in order to rob our own people, except now it will be the government robbing our own people. Not just the government. If any one of you who understand fractional reserve banking, and excuse me if I speak a little bit quick on this matter, but if you have any question on the matter, I will answer you, because it's at the center of understanding cryptocurrencies. If you realize that the monetary supply of any country, okay, is only 2.5% to 2% is done by the government. That's in the form of pieces of paper and coins. 97.5 or more is done in the form of credit that is issued by private banks. So of all the rupees in circulation that you have in your country, only the government only benefits in 2%, probably. The other 98% is private banks. These private banks lend the money to the people. They don't lend their money, they lend our money to the 28 families that became immensely wealthy in Pakistan. This is already established and has been calculated, and there are studies on this. I recommend any one of you to read the book, Who Owns Pakistan? And it gives a very good record. It's available on the net, Who Owns Pakistan? And it shows you that by the 70s, so the independence, the creation of the central bank is, I think, it's 1953 in Pakistan. By the 70s, I mean, nearly 2 decades, 80% of all the deposits, 80% of all the money in circulation was in the hands of 1,500 companies that they were owned by 28 families. In other words, these private banks lend the money to themselves. Our money was lent to them, who bought, consequently, the gas industries, the big development. The banks took our money and they lent it to these people. In some cases, the bank owners and the people who developed the industries were the same. For example, the case of the Ismailis, and why their Khan is so immensely powerful in this country, because many of these banks were Ismailis. The Ismailis don't believe in anything. They don't believe in riba. So they were the first candidate to join the banking system. There is an unprecedented number of banks. And then you find the Ismailis having an incredible amount of ownership in this country, in our Pakistan. This is all the result of this lack of understanding of this. So the same system that the British had used in order to rob the people, the new Pakistan in the new constitution continued. So the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is just only a matter of decoration. Now, we are talking about cryptocurrencies. So what is the issue here? The issue here is that they will never allowed to have the competition of gold and silver. Never. If you have gold and silver, nobody will use cryptocurrency, but nobody will use cryptocurrency, nobody will use even fiat money. Now, how do I know this? It's just a question of belief. No, I've done it. I created the second digital currency in the world. The first one was created in the United States, a company called eGold, and I created the second called eDinar. So I've been in digital currencies at the very beginning, when nobody knew what digital currencies were, before anybody knew about Bitcoin. So I know the system inside out. And I've been in the evolution of this process. And for example, we became aware that with the present system of internet, it's almost impossible to establish a sound system of gold currency, a digital gold dinar, even though we were following the practice and the law exactly as it is intended. Until it came blockchains, this is the interesting part. Okay, so you can have a cryptocurrency which is asset-based. So any one of you who knows about blockchains, one of the great is an internet with a register. So you have a register. The register allows for the creation of digital identities and digital assets. So this is a process known as tokenization. And when you have digital identities, people, and when you have digital assets that they have been certified, I can certify that this person has this, then you can have smart contracts. Okay, and this is the process by which Bitcoin appears. Now, how you define the currency is another important issue. So problem number one is unregulated. Problem number two, there is no alternative contract, currency, sound currency. To compete, to be better than fiat currency is not good enough. It's like saying, okay, I have a soup of pork against eating pork. So the soup of pork is a little bit better than the pork. Well, maybe because one is diluted in water and the other is pure pork, but it's pork. So Bitcoin cannot be compared, cannot say it is functioning against fiat money, because fiat money is wrong, but it has to be compared against gold and silver currency. And in that case, like what we did in Kelantan, once you offer dinar and dirham, the majority of the population accept it. The majority. We have 10,000 shops. We have people in the street using dinar and dirham. We pay zakat using dinar and dirham. It works. But the creation of a cryptocurrency here, it places some questions about what Bitcoin is. Okay, imagine then an asset-based cryptocurrency. I hope some of you understand what I'm saying. So you can take, like, for example, Venezuela, and they say one unit of petro cryptocurrency, or the petro, known as petrol, is represented by X amount of oil. Okay, at that point, when you are buying and selling, it's a physical asset. So it has an underlying price, which is the commodity itself. Now, this is different than Bitcoin. Bitcoin simply moves up and down without any reference. So it's perfect for speculation. So what you are buying nothing. There is nothing that you can hold. And that is not only awkward at the time of evaluating, but at the time of regulation even more. So a crypto asset base based on gold and silver will be something like a crypto dinar. Now that is acceptable. Still, there are certain laws. I'm just trying to kind of make you think in terms of what Islamic law will require. First of all, the asset has to be well defined. And every unit, every digital unit must represent a particular gold coin. Now, at that point, what you have is the following. Each unit of crypto dinar represents one physical gold coin that is stored in a place known to all of us. Then you can transfer the right over that coin that is to another person. That will be done through an agency. So this is a person holds your coin, your physical coin, and then you give instructions to your agent to make a payment for you. This is wakala. This is well known. This is acceptable. We know that it can happen with physical coins. What the difference is that you can go to the person, your agent in person and say, please make this payment possible for another person. Pay this other man when he comes. Okay, this giving instructions to the wakil. It's perfectly fine. You can do it by a phone, and this will be a phone payment system. With a mobile, that will be a mobile payment system. That you can do it with PC, it will be a digital payment system, or you can do it through the block that guarantees my identity when I'm passing this instruction, and that will be a cryptocurrency. So what we are defining here is not cryptocurrency as in the coin, the currency is crypto, but the crypto defines the way in which you communicate with the wakil. I hope you understand me. So the crypto only is a way of communicating, giving instructions to the wakil that are guaranteed by contract, by defining the instructions given and defining the person that is issuing the instructions. So you could then, having a store of dinars, physical dinars, that each one of them is identified with one crypto dinar, and then you can make payments with this crypto dinar. Yes, that can be done. Now, against that background, and we can discuss this thing further if you're interested and go into the details. Against this background, the other cryptocurrencies, what are they? It's completely ludicrous, unnecessary, false pieces of information, because they have no definition in real terms. They don't have any value in themselves. They only have value in as much as the people keep buying and selling. The same thing that you would do with the tulips. I don't know any one of you who knows the phenomenon of the tulips in Holland, where the people bought and sold tulips to the point that it reached millions when the thing in itself was worth only 100. So the buying and the selling in the stock of one asset doesn't mean that this is the real price. It's just, you can create artificially the conditions whereby the price is artificially lifted, creating the same process of manias that we find in the stock exchange, the famous bull times and bear times. These are in totally independent of the value of the commodity because there's no underlying commodity. So that's the first issue. In that definition of Imam Malik, that is any commodity used as a medium of exchange, the word commodity here eliminates itself. Now, let's imagine that it is not a commodity, but it is dine. Okay, in Islam, you have two forms of, you can buy and sell two types of categories. Ayn is something physical, or you have dine. Dine is anything in the form of, I promise to pay, a promissory note, or a debt, or any liability. That's dine. So you can buy between commodities. Ayn for ayn is perfectly acceptable, but is totally forbidden to exchange dine for dine. Forbidden. And this is part of riba. So it's dine for dine is not. Now, how about ayn for dine and dine for ayn? Only in certain circumstances can happen. So you can exchange one ayn for an ayn, for example, in cases where there is no alternative, but it follows certain conditions. These conditions are known as the conditions of transfer of debts, and it follows this fundamental principle. When I pass my debt with a third party to another party, I can only do it on account of the other party being present. So in other words, I have to break the old contract and I have to make a new one with the person that is involved. Only in those conditions can be accepted. But in the case of food, for example, you cannot sell, even if you have all the guarantees that the food is somewhere, if the food is not present, you cannot buy it. So anything to do with food and with coin is not allowed. So you cannot exchange coin for coin that is not there. So the ayn of coin, because that is riba nasia. For example, I give you one physical gold coin and you give me dime in gold. I cannot do this transaction. I can only exchange the gold for gold physically there. Imam Malik goes to the extreme that he says, if you have two gold coins and somebody comes to somebody who's doing an exchange, for example, he wants to exchange 2 gold dinars for 1 coin of 1 dinar. Okay, just because he wants, or vice versa. You have a 2 dinar coin and you want 2 dinars because it's known as exchange, safar. And if that is the case, is it Malik? If you put the 2 coins on the table and the person who was doing the exchange takes the 2 coins, put them underneath the table, and then he takes the double dinar and puts it on the table, that's riba. So the only way it can happen is the 2 gold coins are there and my 1 double dinar is there, and you physically exchange it on the spot, not even a fraction of a second. And you can understand why. Okay, at the time probably it was like a kind of, this is excessive, but today with these fractions of seconds, the whole banking industry exists. So nothing is allowed, not even a second. Like in riba al-fadl, not even 1 cent. If you lend $1 billion and if you charge 1 cent, that is forbidden. And the same thing with time, not even a millisecond. There is the case of Umar al-Khattab that he was exchanging money, or he spoke about somebody who exchanged money, and he went and he said, okay, wait for me here, and I'm going to go to the house to pick up the money and then I pay you. And Umar al-Khattab ruled that that transaction is haram unless you follow that person to his house, and then when in his house he gives you the money, then it is acceptable. So no additional time. That means that you cannot exchange ayn for dine. It means that the transaction, in order to perform the job of a currency, Dyn is not qualified. It doesn't allow you to create currency out of Dyn. Because, for example, you will not be able to buy, if the Dyn is defined in gold and silver, you cannot buy any gold and silver. You can buy with gold, silver, and with silver gold, but always hand to hand. Okay, only hand to hand. So Dyn cannot become currency. A Dyn cannot become currency because you cannot buy anything in delayed terms. If the currency itself is a delay, you cannot buy in delayed terms because that will be Dyn for Dyn, and that's forbidden. So Dyn cannot perform as a currency. So anything other than a commodity cannot become a currency. And that means that cryptocurrency that we want to define has to be based in something that is commodity based, not in the promise of delivering any services or any amount of wealth of any kind. It has to be there in order to be currency. So here we are applying around the idea that a cryptocurrency can only be defined in terms of gold and silver. But here is interesting. Why do we want to promote any other cryptocurrency if we could have our own? Dr. Mahathir spoke about the creation of a gold dinar base for Islamic bloc, the creation of Islamic trade bloc based on the gold dinar, just like the Europeans have the euro. The Prime Minister, I have spoken twice actually on the subjects, but he was not. He did not pick it up. He only picked up the idea that it's a wonderful idea that Mahathir did. But I don't give up. I think one can speak with the Prime Minister and present the case, especially all the authorities that we have here on this gathering. If we all come and we say, let's bring the dinar and the dirham, and we create a cryptocurrency, a digital currency, following the law without exception. Okay, here is not the Sharia is not here just to play with. If, in other words, if our ulama do not consider it halal, you cannot call it Islamic currency. Following the law, okay, and understanding these questions of Ain and Dain, what it can be done and what it cannot be done with cryptocurrency. For example, sorry, in order to bring this matter forward, what we will be challenging is not just the rupee. The rupee will, with time, it will disappear. If you have gold and silver payment in Pakistan, 99% of people, anyone who has a little bit of brain will use it because it has no inflation. Gold and silver has no inflation. One chicken at the time of Rasulullah cost 1 dirham. To buy today, you can go to Islamabad or Rawalpindi, or you can go anywhere, and you can buy a chicken for approximately 1 dirham, which is the equivalent of 2.93 grams of silver. You calculate 3 grams of silver, approximately 1 chicken. This is 1,400 years later. The price is the same. Now compare the price that you are paying for a bottle of water today in rupees in comparison to when you were a kid 20 years ago. What you could buy, many of you will remember what you could buy 20 years ago with 1,000 rupees and what you can buy with 1,000 rupees today. In the meanwhile, what has happened? The money has been robbed. Okay, cannot happen. It cannot happen if what you have is commodity. Okay, and the same thing that will happen with any cryptocurrency if it doesn't have any definition. It will fall in price, or it becomes impractical, or becomes a question of manipulation, which is the case of Bitcoin. The price will not fall because the number of Bitcoins that they are established are limited by statute. But it will not allow you to operate any transaction because the cost of the transaction are unacceptable. So what we need is a system where the commodity is the asset is a commodity. Ideally, dinar and dirham. Dinar and dirham in Pakistan. If Pakistan establishes this payment in dinar and dirham, it can become not just the currency of Pakistan, but the currency of the world. Because here, what we are challenging is not the rupee only, but the US dollar. The gold dinar is the end of the US dollar. It's universal, it's cheaper, and it's faster. Even with the system that we created back in the in the late 90s, we could transfer $1 million worth of gold from Dubai to Islamabad faster and cheaper than any bank. So technically this is possible. The question is to establish the legality behind that. And if Pakistan, with the help of the ulama and the intellectuals, establish an gold dinar asset-based cryptocurrency using blockchain technology, and there is a further discussion about what this blockchain technology is, which we haven't even started. But if in these conditions, we can create the currency of the world, Pakistanis not only will have a decent currency without inflation, and nobody will rob them, but they will have the most powerful currency in the world. Being able to work with your currency anywhere and buy whatever you like, because gold is universal. And with two parties that they're interested, the two countries that are interested in gold are Russia and China. China leading the matter. They want to create a currency for the BRI, for the Belt and Road Initiative, and they need a universal currency. You cannot trade internationally and you have 53 different local currencies, because by the time you start Forex from one to another, you end up with nothing. What you need is a single currency. But that single currency cannot be the yuan, because the yuan is national currency. In the same way that we don't like the US dollar, the fact that the US dollars, the America will give us pieces of paper and that we use for trading, because all they need to do is to print more. America can give us pieces of paper for oil, aluminium, gas, whatever they want. And we give them assets and they give us paper. When the United States of America needs more, all they need is to print more. Now, you don't need to be a genius to realize that under those circumstances, the United States has a privilege, an enormous privilege. They can buy anything they want. They can buy the entire Pakistan with pieces of paper, as long as we accept them. So we are not going to replace the US dollar with the yuan. The only thing that doesn't have a nationality and is independent from nations is gold and silver. So under those circumstances, the creation of a gold and silver cryptocurrency, asset-based cryptocurrency, it will transform the world, and it will become the currency of all the Muslims, with a number of conditions. And if you want, we can discuss what are those conditions, what makes this project the best conceivable project, and what will make it halal and what will make it forbidden. So what are the boundaries of this? So this is what I believe. So in terms of Bitcoin, the issue is it's an unregulated casino. This is from the point of view of investment. From the point of view of shareholding, if somebody thinks that this is related to you buy shares or something, there's no sharing there, because you are not owner to anything and you don't have any decision on anything. And from the point of view of the necessity of commodity in order to define currency in Islam, Bitcoin is not a commodity. The only thing that it can bear is the capacity is the only our only problem will be, the only thing that we can ask is that there will be that the value of the currency doesn't modify to the lowest, because what you have is a limited amount, but there's no definition of it in terms of something. All you can say is that maybe I promise to give you a service. Bitcoin is offering a service, is still not good enough from the point of view of what constitutes money in Islam. And yet, and the final argument is that, hey, why do we want to Islamize this if we have something better that is Sunnah, that is known to us, that is mentioned in Quran, that it has been the practice of the people of Medina, that it is universal, that it has no inflation, etc., which is gold and silver? Why don't we use the model of Islam? Why do we need to think about Islamizing an alternative when we have something better of our own? So this is the fundamental issue. And for me, a valid discussion on this matter will be, as I said earlier, how do we put in motion the creation of the most powerful currency in the world in Pakistan, and bring together what Dr. Mahathir and Dr. Erbakan, the president of Turkey, and the president of Malaysia, called an Islamic trade bloc. I have been in the last few weeks invited by the government of Turkey in order to discuss the implementation of gold dinar in Turkey. I would like to arrive to a similar situation with the government of Pakistan. And from among you, you can create a front and led by Dr. Umair to put in front of the government a blockchain solution to the implementation of the gold dinar. And I leave it here.
Yes, Jazakallah Sheikh. Now we are going to open the forum. If you would like to ask any question directly from Sheikh, so please raise your hand and I will recall your name, and please you may ask the questions now. If Brother Atif Malik or Dr. Safiullah would like to ask any question, first of all, so I would prefer them first.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Sheikh, I've just put the similar question in the chat. So what I understand from all the talk is that Islamic banking, starting from Islamic banking in Pakistan or Europe to the Bitcoin, everything is illegal and not as per Islamic rules. Is it right perception I have after your talk?
Islamic banking doesn't have an iota of Islam in it. It's completely haram, haram, haram. And so is Bitcoin. Is that there is nothing in it that it can be accepted in Islam.
So I would like to have your opinion on it. I personally think that the dilemma which Muslims are facing from last 300 years in this modern trade, that we are not able to legalize the transactions, what is happening globally. So we keep on thinking and creating something like which you have already shared is golden dinar, but in parallel we are missing the boat. And like the world is all about economics. Like you explained in 1800, India used to have a very decent share of GDP. So if we are not part of the modern trade, how we expect to improve? Or it is just like we have our own taqwa and we keep on praying and things will change?
Look, I'm a Sufi sheikh, so I have to disagree fundamentally with you. Taqwa is your wealth. Your wealth is taqwa. Taqwa is what allows you to see the world. If you don't have fear of Allah, you will have fear of the world. And that's what makes you believe that the Americans have the money and the wealth and the markets that you seek. And they have nothing of that. They don't have money. They have promised false pieces of paper called dollar. The day that you can say this is a worthless piece of paper, you would have finished their job. The wealth is in trading. Islam is essentially a model of trading. And the best way of entering into these markets, Atif, is precisely what is already in front of our noses. Look, China is the largest market in the world. Okay, they have 800 million of middle class. You don't have to forget about Europe and America. They're nothing. They're just disappearing in the background. The whole economy of the world, the weight of the economy is moving towards Asia again. By the year 2050, Atif, the number one economy of the world will be China. The number two will be India, which is us. You know, because we have millions of Muslims in India. Okay, we are just, this is our extension. The day will come where India is back into our hands. Pakistan, the creation of Pakistan is chapter 1. Okay, the chapter 2 is that we bring back our nation together. Okay, and we are going to do it not because of military force. It will come if it needs to come, but it happened in the beginning. It will happen because we liberate the Indian population from the slavery of riba and from the slavery of an economy of a handful of people robbing the majority of the people of India. We will liberate the people of India. But in order to liberate the people of India, Atif, we have to liberate our own people. How can you look into the world that we need to conquer when our own people on a daily basis are being robbed with a piece of paper that is false? On a daily basis, every Pakistani is robbed. Inflation is theft. Theft. Our people are being robbed on every second as we speak. Since we started this conversation up until now, the rupees that you have in your pocket have lost value. You don't even know why. Nobody tells you why. And the only person in this country that is starting to look into the matter is a group of young new generation of ulama in Karachi, led by Dr. Umair, who is by far the most important person in this gathering today. Is that we are being hosted by a great alim. That is the big thing, Atif. And taqwa, don't dismiss taqwa. Taqwa is not just becoming an idiot, like they represent in Egyptian movies. Taqwa is your glory, is your power, is what allows you to see. Is to recognize that all we need is to follow Allah, to love Allah, obey Allah, trust in Allah. That is what brings about, we have to trust the Sharia, because we have somehow come to the conclusion that the Sharia is just, well, just a feeling that you have in the weekends when you go to the mosque. That is not Atif. Is Allah truly has guaranteed us, has given us the Sharia in order to succeed. And the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that if you fulfill what I've told you, my instructions, you follow my commands, you will rule the world. And this is, we are into this moment. And Atif, we are not denying the world, we will conquer the world. In fact, I would say Pakistan is an ideal geographical position because it's in between the East and the West. It's China on one hand, Europe on the other. Okay, and in route, what you find is Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey. We are the center of the world. In this new link between East and West, in the Euro-Asian continent, we are right in the middle. The activation of the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, is the best strategy for Pakistan. In other words, the Silk Route, the old Silk Route that we founded, is our instrument to enter into the markets, not to become poor, to become immensely wealthy. Because at the moment all the trading goes through the sea, you see, they bypass our centrality. We bring the land, but the British, they said, no, only the ships. And they created instability in the Central Asia. The game was, if there is instability in Central Asia, the trade will have to go through the sea. But Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader, has come up with this extraordinary idea that we have to endorse, whether he's a socialist or whatever it is. He's not a Muslim, but it doesn't matter. The idea still remains good. Is to link China and Europe with rail, fast rail. That means that a cargo train at 250 kilometers an hour can reach from Shanghai to Moscow in one day, and from Moscow to Spain, where I live, in another day. So that's 2 days from Shanghai to Moscow to Spain. Today, a ship takes 26 days. When you can do that by land, the ship kind of disappears. It's like, you know, if you want to trade between China, the western part of China and Pakistan, it is completely absurd to go by sea. You will go by land. So the same thing with the Euro-Asian continent, we go by land. Now, why is this important? Okay, we have something called the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the CPEC. Okay, and I want Atif to pay attention to this because I want your approval on this. Because if it doesn't make sense to you, I will not be able to convince anybody. But tell me, in this economic corridor that we have created, China has invested a lot of money in making these roads. You know, it's amazing the things they've done in the north, you know, overpassing the Himalayas. We have the system from Gwadar back to China. The road is there. But what benefit there is for the Muslims? All you can do is to sit down there on the road, you know, and see these trucks passing. You know, is one red, blue, green, how wonderful, it's so wonderful we have this road. That's not good. But what if we make stopovers? Stopovers. So in other words, a place where the people can trade and the trucks can stop. Now, we used to call this thing caravanserai, public marketplaces. And this is by creating a stopover, a public marketplace with a caravanserai. Caravanserai is like a funduk, it's like a hotel for traders. And this is the caravanserais. Then between the caravanserais, if we make 25 caravanserais in Pakistan, from each one of these caravanserais, you can make a caravan. So this is an organized group of traders going to another place through all the entire network. And the caravans, the good thing about the caravans is not private companies, is what Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to do. It's a gathering of people, it's a guild, it's the community itself, it's a public institution, regulated public institution. So in other words, it represents people. There is no one that takes over the rest. And we will be doing what Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Sunnah profession, we follow Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in everything. We have beards because we love Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But what is the profession, Atif, of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? He was a caravan trader, not a shopkeeper. Some people think, no, he was a trader. Like I have a shop in Lahore, so I am a trader too. No, that's not trading. Trading is caravan. And we can activate these caravans in a second phase of development, which is the creation of public marketplaces and caravan. Now, when you bring the caravan, you bring also kirat. Kirat is the financing of trading. So what is Islamic finance? Islamic finance is not cryptocurrencies, it's the financing of trading. That can only happen if the caravans are in place. Now, this is bringing back the Sunnah. This is the way of Medina, but this is not going backwards. It's going back to the future, because we are bringing a single currency for the entire BRI, our dinar, our Pakistani dinar, that you will help us to build, Atif. And a single currency that it can be used throughout the whole network of BRI, it will solve one huge problem the Chinese cannot solve. And second, we will reinstitute the public marketplaces, the souks, as the basis of the creation of wealth. The creation of wealth is in trading, not in finance. All the focus is finance, finance, finance. But the wealth of the nation is in trading. There is a famous Hadees of Rasulullah that said, 9/10 of the risk comes from trading. 9/10 of the risk comes from trading. You want wealth for the nation, give them trading. But there is no trading in Lahore. There is no public markets in Lahore. Trading is restricted to a few people who hold the shops. We have malls and we keep building malls. But what we need is public marketplaces, mega institutions. Okay, we are working in a project, and I will invite all of you to be part of it. And this project is to build the first public market in Istanbul, in the area which was the old airport. The old airport has been vacated because a new one has been created, and in this land, we are hoping to create a public marketplace that is linked to the BRI, and it will become the model for public marketplaces. So the wealth in Islam, if we want to restore the wealth to the people of Pakistan, what we have to open up trading for everybody to be able to participate. And then alongside with it, the creation of not of industrial parks. This is where our industrialists want. They want places where they have to pay no taxes, and they can develop these industries with no taxes. Now, what we will develop in these areas is, alongside with the public marketplace, is what they call in China productive production ecosystems, which are structures based on waqf and guilds. And if any one of you is interested in this and you want to know what is the productive, we've been looking at the monetary system of Islam. And in order to understand the monetary system of Islam, we have to go back to the commercial model of Islam. And when you understand the commercial model of Islam, you will see how the productive model of Islam, how the Muslims throughout the centuries have created manufacturing industries that they are infinitely better than the ones that they were developing in the West. Better models, more productive and more efficient. By the way, this is what China is doing. China is developing these institutions in the city of Yiwu, and I can show you how this thing is operating on practically in the same basis in which Islam did it, which is how, okay, is to solve the mystery. Instead of having these industrial parks that they do in the West, so Pakistan is doing exactly what the people in the West do, is allowing the very wealthy people of Pakistan to become even wealthier. Instead of that, what China is doing is developing productive manufacturing environments, ecosystems, in which everything is built. They have the machinery, they have the warehouses, they have the offices, all built. All you have to do is to hire an office, hire a workshop, hire the machines that you need, and you have a public marketplace where you can buy the supplies and you can sell your product. So the infrastructure is offered as a service. Infrastructure as a service. So you share infrastructure. Okay, this is how the guilds operated. They shared infrastructure. That infrastructure is waqf in itself. So the means of production, they are part of the waqf of the nation. The people hire the services, which means that the threshold to enter into business is the lowest conceivable. You don't have to buy everything. You don't have to buy the machine, buy the place, etc., etc. You can just hire, which means that you can expand. If you have a good contract, you can expand the services that you hire. But if you contract, you can just contract without getting into debt. Now, this model of incubation of small companies in China has a 95% result, positive result. The system of borrowing money and these industrial places in Europe, it has a 90% failure. So what we are doing by the introduction of WACC at the level of production, we can guarantee that the small and medium enterprises of Pakistan can survive. So the use of common property is the means to guarantee private initiative. Islam guarantees private initiative, and that means wealth. So here it is the picture that I want to offer you, Atif. Pakistan can become the leader of the BRI by offering a second phase of development, which is what we have done until now is infrastructure of trading, of transport, and now we want to create a second phase of commerce. I guarantee you that Turkey will become your partner. And Turkey and Pakistan, they have a very good relationship, Erdogan and our prime minister. If we can put them together, we can create a new model of trading based on Islam, public marketplaces, caravans, and kirat. And when we have that,
Sheikh, excuse me, there are some other participants who would like to ask some questions. Mavish Rani has raised her hand. So please, Mavish Rani, please ask the question directly to the Sheikh.
Thank you so much. Just to add a little point that Brother Atif was probably worried about that we are left behind. I think we should also look at the alternative models the world is already seeking for, and we should join hands. So we should just not follow the ongoing routes. My question is that primarily the reason why we are afraid of the alternatives is also that we are not probably good enough to build IT infrastructures because a particular set of group are holding a control of this field. So is this fear right, or is it just a phobia, and we can have our own IT structure so that we can have this e-system based on dinar and all that? So that's what my question is, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Navesh. Yeah, I think there is a lot of fear, okay, but I would say the most important sentiment is that we have like an inferiority complex when it comes to our religion. is that we have heard far too many times on the kuffar that we are backwards and they are forward, this idea of progress. I think it's entirely false. I think what we have to discover is the power of our religion and to embrace our religion. But nothing can be done without fixing certain home issues. For example, the question of riba is before you talk about cryptocurrencies, if there is one measure that it will start changing the things in Pakistan, if you were to ask me what is the first thing that you will decide, I would say is the nationalization of banking. That's the number one. It is completely irrational, primitive, and corrupt to have private institutions called banks that they lend my money to myself. Our money to ourselves is our money in the first place. Nobody can create credit except the government itself. Now, the idea of public banking, to nationalize all the banks and to give them to the government, is in order to give Imran Khan power. He doesn't have any power at the moment. The only power he has in order to pay the bills of a debt that he cannot pay, and then to make a little road here and a little road there as decoration. He doesn't have power. Now compare that with Xi Jinping has power. And that's what we need. We need power for our prime minister. Xi Jinping has power, number one, because he is in charge for life. For life. And the people in the West are outraged with this because they say, no, that's a dictator. Then Omar ibn al-Khattab was a dictator himself. And Rasulullah would have been a dictator himself. No, they are not. It's because leadership is for life. We trust as individuals to lead the affair. It means he's not under no pressure from anybody in order to do whatever he wants to do. And then a second thing is that he may be good or he may be corrupt, but at least he has power to decide either way. At the moment, there is no such possibility for Imran Khan because every 4 years he's tested. So power, I would need to concentrate on power of Xi Jinping versus Imran Khan. Imran Khan doesn't control the banking system. All the banks in China, on the other hand, are under the hands of the government of Xi Jinping. So in other words, if Xi Jinping says, we want to invest in 5G technology, all the banks in China will invest in 5G technology. He has control over all universities. So if he says all the research have to go in 5G again, so all 5G or blockchain technology, they will all move in the same direction. He has control over the media. So if Xi Jinping says we want to invest in 5G, all the media will say 5G is important and it will communicate in the favor. He controls the army, which in Pakistan, our prime minister doesn't. He doesn't have control of the army. He doesn't have control of the banks. He doesn't have control of the economy. He doesn't have control of anything. He doesn't have power. He may be a good man, but he cannot do anything. What is the first measure?
Sheikh, Dr. Mahmood would like to ask something.
Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Mahmood, please. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Vadillo. I mean, first of all, very impressive talk, and I really appreciate your vision for the Islamic world. I think one of the things that really, that is really, problematic for me is the vision that we have of the I would say rather pan-Islamism, right? I mean, making one ummah stuff. And that has been invoked, I would say, for political reasons in the past. And I think that idea should not remain unchecked while proposing this idea. And one of the things, for example, you were giving the example of Imran Khan, that he should have the power to make decisions. But I think over the passage of time, we have come to know that the power must not be concentrated in hands. And even if you give the example of Umar Khattab, his power was not unchecked. The second thing that I would like to, bring forth is that another consideration. States change their interests. They define their interests very differently. And we all know that many big powers in the Muslim world, like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, they have been involved in the proxy wars. Now, considering these things, I think proposing singular currency scheme is really ideal, a good ideal, and I think we should appreciate to move on. But to what extent would it last? That's the first risk. And of course, that should not stop us thinking alternative forms of the economy. But still, I think if we do not give its due attention, that, for example, over the passage of time, changing interests of the state. Secondly, the very idea of the pan-Islamism in the past and the failures, of course. And then this proxy war involvement of all our three big, I would say, the Turkey and every other country. And the fourth is, what did we learn from our past? I mean, it was the debate of the 70s and even before the 50s too about the pan-Islamism. So I think I would like you to, respond, if you like, on these issues, because these are the very, something that had very with this. Thank you.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
well, let me respond to the pan-Islamism first. I'm against pan-Islamism. I'm in favor of Dar al-Islam, one single nation. This is the command, is to restore unity, the caliphate. The only problem is that the people who have invoked the caliphate since the fall of the caliphate were the people who have destroyed the caliphate. Remember that we are in a post-caliphate environment in which the Arab nations in particular, they fought with the foreign powers in order to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the very, very result of treason against Islam. Using British weapons, they fought against, and they were rebels. Now, this is one of the leading nations of the world. It's a nation that is there to get that pan-Islamism never exists. And the creation of all the other small emirates in all the oil regions, where there is a little bit of oil, there is an independent nation. The same thing in Brunei, for example, is a tiny little place, but it has a lot of oil, so they had to make it independent from Indonesia to Malaysia. And this creation of these national states, it was the way of continuing ruling after World War II. They figured out that as long as we have control of the finances, it doesn't matter whether you want to pray on Saturday, Sunday, or you want to dress in a kurta, or they don't care. The only thing they care is the money. And what you have to understand is that the present system of nations is essentially capitalist constitutions that guarantee national debt, central banking, that's Arriba, and paper money. In those circumstances, there is not independence for the nations, Said Mahmoud. The people are enslaved. The very idea of these nation states, constitutional states, is in order to enslave people. I mean, not only in the Muslim world, it's the same thing in the West, in Spain. Spain is a Western country who has a high GDP, and there's a lot of services for anybody here. Our roads are clean, and there is a good police state, and there's hardly any crime. But the government doesn't have any decision at all. When all at the moment, Europe is living out of printing money. All the countries in Europe are in debt. What is the difference? The difference is when the Europeans want to finance, like the United States, Europe and America, when they want to finance the deficit, we produce magical pieces of paper called euro that you in your country will accept. In Pakistan, we can throw you any amount of dollars and we can buy anything that we want. We can pay our debts with this magical piece of paper. How about this magical piece of paper? Why? Why the dollar has to be the currency of the world? What about pan-Islamism? What does it mean, pan-Islamism, in a world in which the countries are totally submitted to this rule? Saudi Arabia has flooded Without Saudi Arabia, probably the dollar would have not lasted that long. The reason why the dollar is because they have accepted the fact that they will trade oil for dollar. Imagine how fragile the system is, that if Saudi Arabia will make a return and they come back to the deen and they abandon these practices that they have been doing since the beginning, and they were to eliminate riba from their constitution, and they were to eliminate the banking system from the constitution, and to disallow the expoliation of their wealth, by a family of corrupt individuals from day one, corrupted to the core, that they keep ownership of the wealth of the oil against the nation, and they sell it to Americans for pieces of paper. And they call the country Saudi Arabia. I mean, which nobody is Arabistan. It's not that it doesn't belong to the one family. That family has to go. And if they go, pan-Islamism can restore again. And in the same thing with the regimes that they were created in the Middle East. They're all constitutionally based. They're all Western in their very nature. Pakistan is not an independent nation. It's that you think you are independent, but the people are not. The constitution guarantees that you are under the rule of the West. The economic system of Pakistan still remains alien to Islam. The people, the question that you have to answer is how the people of Pakistan can be robbed day after day after day with a piece of paper that is completely false and it has no value. How this rupee depends on the US dollar. US dollar and the Pakistan rupee are the same. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the creation of an Islamic, not pan-Islamism, but the gathering of the Muslims could take place in the same way that the European Union has come together, by trading, creating conditions of trading. And these conditions of trading could perfectly be the creation of a single currency, because we don't have any currency. And that currency will be stronger than the US dollar. Is the dream of Dr. Mahathir in Malaysia. Gather all the Muslim nations under the singularity of a single currency, like the euro, and then start improving the trading conditions. That's not unthinkable. But that the historical failure of pan-Islamism of the past is not because being together is a bad idea. It's because the players that they were there, they never had any intention to create a single nation again. Starting by the one that you mentioned as the most important, Saudi Arabia, they have no intention. And the countries that the whole division of countries is that some of these countries don't even have an entity, like United Arab Emirates or Qatar or Bahrain. They are all just artificial creations from the West. So we need to think in terms of a world that is changing in front of us. The fall of the American European powers for the first time challenged by a nation country. This change of hegemony between the East and the West is an opportunity in order to start modeling our nations in a different way. United States is falling, China is rising. And in that gap, the creation of a new gathering of forces of the Muslim world around the BRI and the single currency could constitute this dream of coming together. Is not, in my view, is not unthinkable, but it's within the reach.
Habban Raza, please, you are requested to ask your question.
Sheikh, it was great that you talk about how dangerous is the crypto world, and now we have another thing that is entered into the crypto world, and that is NFT, non-fungible tokens. So my question is that, are these NFTs dangerous for the future, or it is a good thing? Please share your views about this.
Well, it all depends on the fine lines. No? If by non-fungible we refer to strict rules of commodities that they are represented on themselves, so in other words, one unit, one physical asset, then we are moving into the right direction. But I'm afraid that under that umbrella, there is a lot more than that, and the fine letter is what defines the good or the bad. In essence, the difference between the system of gold standard and a monetary system based on gold and silver is a fine line. The gold standard guaranteed that every piece of paper will be paid on demand by the institution who issues that paper. So if I'm a bank and I own X 100 pieces of gold, I can issue only 100 pieces of gold and silver. So the bills represent one by one the amount of gold. That will be 100% reserve. But the gold standard system wasn't based on that. It wasn't based on only I will guarantee the payment. In other words, I could have 100 pieces of gold and issue 500 in the form of bills, and it still will be gold standard. So, and that's problematic because that's the beginning of inflation. You are creating money out of nothing. A system based on gold and silver coins will not allow for fractional reserve, but it will be 100% reserve. So in other words, for every one unit, one digital asset. So if there is an identity between the assets and the digital currency, then if that's what it means, then we are fine. But the fine print is important. So from our perspective, the idea of to create a gold cryptocurrency, as in my view, projected to the BRI, to become the currency of the BRI. And we have a big meeting in May in Istanbul about the BRI digital. And my contention is going to be to integrate BRI digital with the BSN. BSN is the Chinese blockchain system. And if we can make this connection possible, then the only logical currency for the BRI will be a digital gold coin. It will be the best, better than the yuan. Now, the Chinese have created something called the yuan convertible into gold. I don't know whether you're familiar with this, which is only used for the purchasing of oil contracts. But what we will be doing will be extending that yuan convertible into gold into a unit that serves trading. And to do it with blockchains, it guarantees that there is a relationship one-to-one between physical and representational form. So that will be the digital imprint. If that guarantee is done, then you have the best currency in the world. You will be able to make payments in seconds. You will be able to hold a wallet. Anyone can have a gold account. You can have your rupee account, you can have all the other accounts, but you have a gold account that allows you to buy and sell things throughout the world, almost without exception. And so that's my reading on the non-fungible. Is the fine print. If the fine print is correct, then it's good. Dr. Umair?
Yes, please. Yes. Now we would like to end the session, and I would like to thank you all for joining us today. And before I end the session, I would like to thank Sheikh Umar Ibrahim Vadillo for sparing some time for us and giving us his precious talk on the subject. And I end the session with the Hadees of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is narrated that one who reads Suratul Kahf on Fridays will find his entire week enlightened until the next Friday. And it is written in Suratul Kahf that when Ashabul Kahf, after more than 300 years, they woke up. So one of them asked his brother, فَبَعَثُوا أَحَدَكُمْ بِوَرِقِكُمْ هَذِهِ إِلَى الْمَدِينَةِ فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَيُّهَا أَزْكَى طَعَامًا فَلْيَأْتِكُمْ بِرِزْقٍ مِّنْهُ. So send one of you with this silver of yours to the city and let him look around which of the eatables are the purest, and let him bring you some food from there. So after more than 300 years, when they got up, they had silver in their pockets and they were capable to use it. So we end our session with this verse of the glorious Quran. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah.
Thank you, Dr. Vadillo. Thank you very much for giving us so much, precious time as well as a beautiful talk. Thank you.
Jazakallah.